resume. Great. And then we have Vanessa is going to take roll. She couldn't get enough and wanted to do it one last time. So thank you for volunteering for that.
Great. We're going to do a rapid one since this is a little bit of an unusual day. So please be ready to chime in. All right. Andrea Scarborough. Bilal Key.
He's joining now.
Oh, great. Diane Song Yu. Gil Lopez. Janet Ferrara. Jasmine McPherson. Jennifer Maldonado.
Present.
Jenny Lynn. Cangela Moore. Catherine Servino. Mac Lawrence.
Yep. Hello, I'm here.
Okay. Rachel Boglin.
I am here.
Richard Nunez Lawrence.
I'm here, present. Thank you.
Ruth Essa. Susan Latham. Toby Shepherd Block. And Savantola. It's me here. Community Board 1, Antonella Di Severio. Community Board 2, Frank or Laura. Community Board 3, Megan Rockwell. Community Board 4, Carol Maholsky. Community Board 5, Walter E. Clayton. Community Board 6, Patrina Schneiderman.
Here.
Thank you. Community Board 7, Dr. James Servino. Community Board 8, Susan Cleary. Community Board 9, Regina Santoro. Community Board 10. Community Board 11. Community Board 12. Let us know they're not here. Community Board 13. Community Board 14. Organizational representatives, Cures, Mary Arnold.
Here.
You, LIC Partnership, Charles Yu. Mr. T. Carding, Adam Mitchell.
Here.
NYC H2O, Ryan Brenner.
I'm here.
Queens Botanical Garden, Evie Hansopoulos.
Here.
Queens Chamber of Commerce, Rona Davis. Queens County Farm Museum. Setman Boulevard Bid. Tully Environmental. Waste Management. If you remember and I missed you, please say here. Wonderful. And if you are a guest, I think we have a form to sign up for newsletters. Is that right? I'll try to find it and put it in the chat.
That's yes, we will find that and send it. I totally forgot about that, but we have a new form for collecting folks' info who want to get more involved.
Yes, I think I can dig it up. So welcome everybody. And feel free to say hi in the chat.
Great. So yeah, so we have a bunch of kind of brainstorming opportunities to learn about tonight. So to kick us off, we have some folks from the Queens branch of Beyond Plastics. And so they'll be talking about both what we can do as a SWAB in partnership, and then also if there are opportunities for individual members who want to get more involved in some of the work that they're doing. They'll also talk about that. So I will pass it off now, and I think we figured out screen sharing, but if not, let me know.
We did. Thank
Awesome.
you, Ryan. So my name is Rachna Shah, and Carolina Korth, who's over there in one of the squares.
And Renee also just joined. I know she just got home from work, so she'll be hopping on. Hey, there's Renee. We're the three.
Yay. So a few of us joined today because we just started on Earth Day. We just want to tell you a little bit about who we are, and like we should look for hopefully areas where we can like work together, as we all, I believe, are trying to find ways to make systemic change with regards to waste. I'm gonna just use my like normal slideshow. Just I'm not gonna go through it with this crowd because I'm sure you all know a lot of it, most of it, all of it. But just to use some of the resources I have. So just give me a sec. Okay, cool. Can you all see that? Okay, so again, not gonna go through this whole thing. It's like a 20-ish minute talk. But just to kind of highlight some of the things that I'm sure you all know about how nefarious and sticky, as I mentioned, plastic and plastic pollution is. The reason that Beyond Plastics was really started, and we just met with the founder, Judith Enck, who was the former regional administrator for the EPA under President Obama. The reason that she started this, and the same reason a lot of us do this work, is because we want to change laws. I'm just gonna really, that's just like the quick and dirty. We want to change laws. Of course, we want to do a lot of other things, educate, try to make community-based movement and projects. So whether that is making a guide of restaurants that allow reuse or things like that is of course our core as well. But the sites that we set very high is to change laws both in the city, but also on the statewide level, and then of course federal if we can. The reason that plastic is just such a important point to separate from all the other zero waste is because it releases greenhouse gas emissions in every single point from the moment it's extracted, because plastics are made from fossil fuels or gases nowadays, which is usually fracked, to where they are produced in places like Chester, Pennsylvania, or Cancer Alley, which is called Cancer Alley for a reason, because a lot of the folks that live in the surrounding regions where these giant billion-dollar plastic production facilities are made have definite higher instances of respiratory illnesses and cancers and other really terrible diseases. So it's a huge environmental justice issue, but right near where these plastics are produced. And that's actually the biggest source of the greenhouse gas emissions. But then of course, transporting them to wherever they end up. In fact, Judith Enck, who I just mentioned, is going to East Palestine tomorrow to talk about the fact that train derailment and the purposeful burning of those chemicals were chemicals that were going to be used to make plastics. And we're not really sure a lot of those dots were connected by the media or other folks. So that's just something we bring up quite a bit, to using these plastics and how they affect our air quality, indoor air quality, the fact that they are in such close proximity to our foods and beverages, and the fact that that hasn't really been regulated properly. And then of course, to this side, that seems like it's more in our wheelhouse of when it becomes waste and when it's either dumped or burned. But really, like, you can't ignore these other aspects. And that's why we kind of started, or that's why Judith started this entire organization. And that's why Carolina and I really wanted to make Queens an active part of this change. So I'm, again, just not going to go through this because I talk about this in detail. This is just the growth chart of plastics. And this is, this is what makes investors' eyes light up with little dollar signs, because this seems like a sure thing. And that part of that, the pandemic didn't really help us at all with when there was actually some movement being made to curb off plastics. And then the pandemic kind of came right at that moment and really knocked all of those good actions like off their feet. But really, plastics is the fossil fuel industry's plan B, as we've like shifted now onto electrifying a lot of our transportation and our appliances and our things like that. As we're moving towards that way, they see the trend that they're not going to be able to capitalize on that. And they see this trend, and they're really kind of throwing a lot of their resources into, perpetuating plastics. We talked about environmental justice. again, I'm sorry, I wish I could give this whole thing, but I won't. Again, you know, we can't recycle our way out of this problem. So a lot of people think, okay, too many plastics, let's just increase recycling. But as many of you probably already know, plastics cannot be recycled. They're really downcycled, meaning their quality is degraded each time they're recycled. So they can only be in the economy circularly for like about 5 or 6 times before it's just unusable and it has to be landfilled or incinerated. So there's that. And then there's this proliferation of these false solutions like chemical recycling, advanced recycling, pyrolysis, whatever names that they've been called. They're a lot of them are just turning these plastics back into fossil fuel at a very, very inefficient rate. And it's just not a solution. It's not an environmentally just solution, really. And so I'm going to just keep going. Okay, and then of course there's this thing about microplastics, which we ingest about a credit card size worth of these microplastics, because that's the only thing that can happen to plastics is them breaking down. So we ingest them. And also these chemicals. There's 13,000 chemicals that are put into plastics, and a lot of these are the ones that leach into the food that I mentioned before. Okay, so I'm just gonna like, I'm not gonna keep going on with this. There's solutions too in this presentation, but the point is, we are just very, very like myopically in a good way, I hope, trying to address this issue by really putting all of our eggs into this Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, which was up for a potential vote back in June.
No,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll
Jump
jump
in.
on there if I
Yes.
can. It did not come for a vote in June, which is a big problem because we have so many co-sponsors right now. We have 62 co-sponsors in the Assembly. We have 31 in the Senate. And it was not introduced in part because of the enormous lobbying that the American Chemistry Council did against it, which is, you know, if you're not familiar with ACC, it's Chevron, Shell, ExxonMobil. I mean, it's like the literally the lineup of the same people that have been pumping carbon into the atmosphere for the last many generations. Amazon, there were a lot, I mean, over $600,000 was spent in lobbyists to try to defeat this bill. We have a ton of co-sponsors, but it was not brought for a vote. So we are working our tails off to try and get it to the point where it will be brought for a vote next year, because we're very confident that if it is, that it will pass. So one thing that we're working on a lot right now is talking, like we're having lobby meetings with, especially in New York City, specifically in Queens. We have Gianaris in Queens, and he's a big deal as the deputy leader of the majority in the Senate. So one thing that, you know, it would be very helpful if folks from SWAB want to get in on lobbying, if you want to get in on lobbying your folks. If there's anyone in Eastern Queens, especially since I don't know where everyone is located right now, if there's anyone in Eastern Queens, Assemblymember Aubrey is a key person to have understand the problem with plastics, because he and Carl Hastie have a long history together, and we really need the Speaker of the Assembly to understand the gravity of this situation so that we can have this brought for a vote. So that's one thing that we've been working on. I'm going to share some links in the chat. I already shared something. Rachna, is it okay if we stop doing the screen share just so I can like see folks in case anybody has questions?
Absolutely. Give me a sec.
Yes, I'm gonna, awesome. So I put a link to an article that I'm sure many of you probably already saw with your interest in solid waste. The conversation yesterday, it's about how recycling basically is a big failure. A lot of folks think that that is a solution, and it's really not. So that's just an interesting piece for you to look at as far as perceptions. There is, here is a link to a petition that Beyond Plastics, the national organization, has about the Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act. If it were to pass, it would potentially be the strongest plastics reduction legislation in the world, which
Yeah.
is massive because
And we have the opportunity to have the California effect where there's
Right.
so much produced for New York that they might just effectively make those decisions across the country.
right. Yeah, literally what California did with fuel efficiency in vehicles, how that just kind of changed it nationwide. We could literally do that here in New York. And in Queens specifically, because of leadership in the Assembly and in the Senate, there is a very good chance that our efforts in Queens will make a big difference. We effectively in this borough can have an outsized influence on the future of plastics in this country, potentially more. So however we can have you involved to help us with that would be wonderful. I'm going to also share, there's the Choose to Reuse bill. I'm going to share that petition in there. It's a city council thing. It's about every corporate owned food establishment that there's a chain, they're still working that out,
Fast
like
casual
what the
and-
final,
yeah.
fast
Mhm.
casual food that's a chain, but corporate owned. I think they're going to be giving exceptions for franchises owned by like individual, like mom and pop type of places. They would have to offer reusable options for dine-in, takeout, and delivery, which the entire nation of Germany has been doing for many years, and it's very successful. So that's something as well, the Choose to Reuse. It's from how it looks, it's probably going to be pretty easy to pass in city council as long as we have enough co-sponsors, though I will say McDonald's put it on their national kill bill list, which is really fun. And then the one last thing that I just want to throw out there and put in the chat before taking questions would be to share our email list, because we do a newsletter once a month, even though we just started, but we're trying to get people as involved as possible. Oh, it didn't share as a link. Well, I'll put a link in there. If you want, you can get more information. Once a month, we'll be sending out things about events and calls to action and whatnot, so that you can also just stay on top of like what's happening with plastics. Yeah. There, I will say, like the Brooklyn SWAB and Manhattan SWAB, Rechna and I went up to Albany in the last week of session to really try and push for the PRIA to get it on the floor for a vote. And the folks from Manhattan and Brooklyn SWAB were there. And it's just really exciting to see so many people like coming together. And we would love to have that happen with Queens too. Does anyone have questions?
Looks like
Yeah.
Mary has a question.
Yeah, do you have a chart such as the one that you had prepared before that would show the compromises that were made in the bill trying to get it to the floor? Because I think a lot of us lost track of that. You know, we were more familiar with the bills before the heat of the end of the session.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that Harcum and Glick, the two sponsors, they aligned the bill so that they actually are the same bill in both houses, and there wasn't really a lot of compromising happening. Like there was some stuff, like in other chemical recycling is still not considered recycling, which is a very key part of the bill, because as Rechna started to touch upon in the presentation, that is like, you know, the incineration of plastics, like at least as far as environmental justice is concerned in New York, that's the biggest risk that we run with plastics and environmental justice. It comes down to like the chemical recycling and frontline communities as far as like waste incineration. So thankfully that did not, we did not lose that in the final iteration that was agreed upon in the houses. I don't think there was a lot of compromising. There were some things that were worked out. I know there were some like Hudson Valley folks who were worried about small businesses, like some like smaller breweries and whatnot. And something they were like, for example, Senator Michelle Hinchy, when I talked to her, she said, actually, I'm totally happy with this now. Like I can sign as a co-sponsor. And it was nothing that Beyond Plastics was not happy about. Like, there were no compromises made that Beyond Plastics was not happy about.
Okay,
No.
antitrust,
Sorry,
antitrust,
antitrust?
yeah. In other words, indemnification against antitrust.
I don't know I don't know every single,
I think-
word
I
of the bill,
think-
so I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
answer that for you, but I can, if you want, I can put you in touch with the deputy director of Beyond Plastics if you want to ask her.
I'm sure that Matt Civillo and Rhonda are in touch with them. But
Yeah, they are. And
that
they were with us and they're awesome.
right, they are awesome, but I know also that they were concerned about some of the things that went on at the end.
The conversations that we were having about the compromises, both Matt and Rhonda were there, and I don't recall them bringing up anything about
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
So, so I would maybe check in with them again, because if that's something they were concerned about, they can probably circle back with you on that. But they were there when there's one particular conversation I remember with Rhonda there. So that didn't come up at that moment as a concern.
And just so
And-
you know who we are as an organization, like, we understand, we're practical enough to know that some compromises have to be made, but we're not
Right.
going to compromise on the core. And like really helping the environmental justice communities and helping all the health impacts and all, like, we're not going to compromise those core principles at all.
Mhm. That's one thing, like Kaminsky had introduced a bill last year and Beyond Plastics actually was like, no, we need to kill this bill because that will not give us the opportunity to pass the type of bill that we want. Hochul had EPR in the budget and it was not good enough. It was a totally washed down version of what we would really need. And so for Beyond Plastics to be so committed to this bill, it's a good bill.
It's a really good bill. I also realized I didn't introduce myself. I just want to say, well, I said my name, but I'm a zero waste consultant here in New York City. And so I help corporate offices and schools and restaurants to go zero waste. And I just did a big project fairly recently with Amy Martman, if anyone here who knows her. But just I'm in this world and I talk to a lot of the different stakeholders. So, and I do a lot of this education, which is why I have decks and stuff. So just to give you a background. Any other questions?
I'm also, by the way, I should introduce myself. as
Yeah,
well.
sorry.
Carolina Korth, other co-president with Rachna, and I know Evie very, very, very well. And you are all so lucky that she is a part of your organization. I have no idea how she has the time. And Renee is like the composting queen of our of Beyond Plastics Queens. I don't know if she wants to introduce herself, but she's actually working on an EPA comment for us. So a woman of many talents.
And I'm using stats from the State of Waste in Queens report for that EPA comment.
Oh,
Already very aligned two sets of organizations here.
Anything else? I mean, even if this is just an introduction to, because we're totally volunteer, we just started, and because of the PRRIA, we kind of like shot out the gate and are getting everything together. So even if this is just an introduction, we can figure out how to align down the road. That would be awesome.
And the bill is going to reduce packaging by 50% over 12 years. And so it gives manufacturers time, but it targets primary and secondary packaging. So that includes the Amazon envelope that it was in. That's the secondary packaging, which is why Amazon lobbyists were out there fighting against it. So, but just so you like, we are going to see such a dramatic decrease in litter, just recycling infrastructure being clogged up with like useless stuff. All the things are just going to be lessened by half if we can get this over the hump. Evie, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So did the bill make it out of committee?
Yes.
Okay, so it made it out of committee.
It did not officially make it out of committee in the assembly, but there was like a way to go around that, but it probably will officially next year. This is Glick's first time as chair on the committee, and with the budget, this session was a hot mess. but it's good to go. It made it out of committee in the Senate like right away.
And then besides Aubrey, are there any other kind of key targets in Queens?
So we just today met with Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, and she actually really wants to champion the bill because she understands the health implications, the environmental justice implications, the climate change implications. So we're really lucky that we have her. She really wants to really be the voice to champion this. I would say, definitely Jeffrey on Aubrey, he's a very senior member and he's very, very respected. So we really, really want him, and he has a direct line to Hasty. Mike Gianaris, we're actually having a meeting with him tomorrow morning with some awesome people at Sierra Club and New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. We, could always use more help. Kristen Gonzalez is a supporter, Sohan Mamdani. We have a ton of co-sponsors, but really, actually, Ron Kim has not yet sponsored it. And I think it's just an oversight because the session was so packed in. So if anyone has a direct line to him, because having worked with his office for New York Renew stuff, I'm very confident that he would probably sign on in a moment as a co-sponsor. Anyone that you think is a leader, really, anyone that you think, especially that that says that they're a climate champion. I love holding on to things like this because I'm like, okay, awesome, let's do it.
If anyone's in the
So anyone-
Rockaway region, because they must see a lot of plastic pollution as well. That's just somewhere we don't have anyone really.
Right.
Okay, my last question is, in the chart that you showed where kind of the production of plastic kind of keeps going up, I'm just wondering, is there an area that they're looking to grow?
Yes.
Just because everything seems to be plastic right now. So I'm just wondering how are they going to kind of continue that trajectory? What are they focusing on? Is there? So
there's they literally, it was immediately before COVID, there were literally 320 some permits that had been filed for ethylene cracker plants and different types of petrochemical plastic production facilities, new ones. That was the last time that I looked at a number of that. One of the big things, and this is something that you can literally Google, the New York Times wrote an article about it, the ACC, the American Chemistry Council, that is really our biggest foe as far as lobbying in Albany against this bill. They actually, the gall of it is amazing. When the US was negotiating a new treaty with Kenya, a new trade treaty with Kenya, literally the ACC sent a memo saying you have to get them something along, I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of you have to get them to walk back their plastic bag ban because Kenya is our entryway to Africa, and Africa does not consume enough plastic. That's literally ACC is oh, we need to break the market in Africa and get
Got it. I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of it's just the single-use disposable and trying to, I think, capitalize on people's fears of initially when COVID hit and that things can be transmitted through reuse, which was completely debunked, but it's still that thought now is, and I think they're really capturing that sentiment and running with it with the single use.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of fear mongering about business this, business that. It's remember when we didn't have plastic? It wasn't that long. I wasn't here, but human beings existed for a long time with things that were more sustainable.
Yeah.
And it is really single-use plastic that we're targeting. If anyone says, well, what about medical? That is not on the table.
Yeah. Or durable plastic that makes cars lighter and all that stuff is fine for now. It's just the needless single use. All right, well, we'll throw our email addresses in the chats as well. So if anyone wants to contact us, please feel free or join us at Beyond Plastics. I know we're all so busy, so don't expect that. But
yeah,
if we can collaborate, if anyone wants to show up at the meetings we already have or start a new meeting and needs our support, we are more than happy to jump in. So just let's keep the lines of communication open, hopefully.
Mhm. Again, the last link that I just shared in the chat is just for our monthly newsletter. And so if you just want to keep track of what we're up to, because we don't have a website right now, that or following us on Instagram, I will share that. That is kind of our current substitute for website.
Cool. Thank you for your time, everyone. I know you all are busy, so thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Cool. And thank you all so much for presenting. So, you know, I think that a lot of this, there's a lot in here for folks. If you're individually interested in getting involved or signing things that Beyond Plastic puts out, like there's definitely opportunities for that. And then on top of that, you know, a lot of our work primarily through the legislative committee, but really anything. We've partnered with Beyond Plastics before, and so I think that partnering going forward is something we definitely would be interested in, and so I think that that's probably where that will take place. But definitely definitely keep us in the loop, and we'll keep you in the loop as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and like I say to all our guests, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we will not be offended if you hop off now.
Unfortunately, got to get ready for the meeting with GNRS in the morning and do a lot of homework. So
Of course, totally.
thank you, everyone.
understandable.
Bye.
Great. Now we have a presentation from the New York League of Conservation Voters on their new zero waste campaign. So I'll turn it over to Alexis.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Alexis. I am with the New York League of Conservation Voters. I don't have a presentation per se, just kind of introducing myself. I am the new program associate, so I just started like around a month and a half ago. And I'm going to be spearheading our waste programming and waste equity and just getting that up and running for the New York League. And I guess part of the reason that I'm here is because I want to listen in and learn more about the work that you all are doing and see where I can, you know, support that work that's already being done, and also just like open that conversation for like the future of like how we can work together moving forward. And I would like, yeah, I'm new to this space, so just learning how the work that we do can complement the work that's already being done on the ground. So yeah, this was just kind of like an introduction, and I wanted to like meet everybody and just get to know more about the work that's being done. Yeah, if there's anything in particular that I can be helpful on, like immediately or, you know, in the near future, like would love to learn more about that, but just kind of wanting to open the conversation because I know that this is going to be like ongoing. But yeah, thank you for having me on here. And if you have any questions or, you know, want to talk further, I mean, I'm going to be on the rest of the call, but also I'll put my email in the chat. So yeah, thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you. Great to meet you. And if you want to fill out the form, if you haven't already, that Vanessa put up, we can get you on our listserv, and that's for everyone Beyond Plastics if you're interested in that as well. Definitely fill that out. We have a Google group where we send around information, events, all sorts of things like that. And so I think that's both a resource for you all to keep up to date on what we're doing, but also it's an opportunity to send things that you have. So if you ever have events or links for folks to sign things, like those are all things that you can send over the Google groups directly, and then also we're happy to have folks come and talk to us at campaign points. If you're looking for the SWAB to sign on as an organization, we are open to folks coming and presenting those things to us, and you know, talk through that. But that's a really good opportunity if you haven't already to just get directly in touch with us.
That's awesome. Thanks. I already filled out the form, so I'll be in contact.
Wonderful.
It's
Thank you so
awesome.
much.
I'd love to add that we do have a voting cycle. So we love to hear from guest speakers and to sign on to different issues. And the more advanced notice that our SWAB or any SWABs get, the better we can support different efforts. So if you're starting to think about something and want to give us a heads up, we can bring it to the attention of the membership so that we have ample time to bring it to full vote and let everybody read over your materials and get familiar and ask their questions. I know personally it takes me a little longer as a volunteer to get around to read everything that I need to make an informed decision. So that's appreciated.
That's good to know. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So I think we'll move on to the next agenda item here. And basically discussion of community board presentations. So just to give some background, something that we've been talking about in the Education and Communications Committee, but also more widely at SWAB, and something that the Borough President's Office is also particularly interested in is doing presentations at as many community boards as are interested. The idea being that in the State of Waste in Queens report, we break down a lot of statistics into community districts. And so we have these, profiles or indicators for each of the community boards about what their diversion rates look like, how much material is being collected. Like there's a lot of information in addition to just educating folks about what the SWAB is, how they can get involved, what we do, how we can partner, like those types of things. So our idea was to work with folks on SWAB, particularly the community board reps who are particularly excited about this and kind of pilot some of these presentations. So whether that's going to the full community board or going to like an environmental green zero waste committee, the idea is that someone from SWAB, whether it's someone from the Education and Communications Committee or just someone who's interested in doing these presentations, would partner with someone from the community board and just give an overview. So I went and gave a pilot of this to community board 2's environment committee. And so what I thought I would do is just kind of go through and show what I created for that. It was a committee, not the whole board, so it was smaller and informal, and so I just put this together. But I think that this is a good starting place. And since I knew we'd be a little not as many folks here tonight, I thought this would be a good thing to walk through. So I'm gonna share my screen and kind of just walk through the slides. I'm not actually going to give the presentation, but definitely interrupt me as we're going, and at the end we can kind of talk about whether there's anything missing or what folks are thinking of for that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, that. Okay. All right, is that working for folks? Perfect. Yes, so I'm gonna leave this not in presentation view because I have notes in the bottom. I'm covering it. So right off the bat, I kind of just started talking about, gosh, there we go. What the SWAB is, talking about how it comes from a local law, and that we bring together a diverse group of folks from volunteer civic groups to industry folks to talk about solid waste issues. That's what our purview is. That's the types of issues we work on. And so anything that community boards are involved in or interested in, whether that's a proposed change to something that DSMY is doing, something that's not being addressed, like anything that comes up within the realm of solid waste management, is something that they can partner with us on, providing us information or partnering in some other way. I talked then about how there are 3 other SWABs that are active and how we work together, particularly on citywide issues. There's a lot of partnership going on, but then there's also a lot of things that are specific to Queens, like the initial rollout of curbside composting. I talked a little bit about some of the stuff we do as a SWAB and how folks can get involved. So our monthly meetings are on Zoom, open to the public. But we also have committee meetings and some other events, and talked about how, you know, everything is open to the public. So people are more than welcome to come to our main meetings or committee meetings if they're particularly interested, and that this was also a good way for folks who are potentially interested in joining the SWAB, coming to some of these events would be a good way to start getting it. Also, some of our events, as we roll out these presentations, we can put in upcoming events so that we're not only talking about hosting events as something that SWAB does, but also letting different community boards know about upcoming events. And then also talking about how in the past we've gone out and done some of these engaging with the communities for different educational campaigns, both individually and in coordination with the others. I then, you know, introduce our State of Waste in Queens report and talk about how we break down a number of indicators by community board, and then start going through with a more updated version of what's in the State of Waste in Queens report. So for this first slide, what I have here is, so all the community boards, or I guess community districts is how the data is broken up. So for all the community districts in Queens, the dark blue bar here is for Queens overall. This yellow is community district 2. This would be like a slide that's, you know, customized for each of the community boards. And this is just the diversion rate. I believe this was everything diverted from landfill. So compost and recycling, I'd have to double check that. But basically this is just showing, you know, how the community board, how their diversion rate compares to the rest of the borough and the borough as a whole. Talking about what it actually is, so the actual rate here. So I was saying CD2 has around 25%, second only to CD11, and that's compared to Queens overall having 20%. And this, you know, if we know going in that a particular community district has a higher or lower composting rate or diversion rate, like those are things we can also pull out and highlight, because part of what we're doing here is also working with folks on, you know, what they need. So if we're finding an area has a lower diversion rate, we can work with the community board to figure out if there's a need for more educational events, other support, like what we can do to work with the community board to increase the diversion rate. So that's one thing that's customizable. The other thing, and you know, again, this was a really quickly thrown together thing, so we can work on some of these visualizations, but also getting at this idea of what is the breakdown of all residential material that's being picked up by DSNY. So looking at recyclable materials, organics, and material that's going to landfill, looking at the total amount, as well as what how this is broken down. I think this is something that's interesting for folks probably to wrestle with more. I don't think that there's a way to convey this really succinctly right away, but the idea is that this would be shared with the community board and are then able to wrestle with the material, dig deeper into it, ask us follow-up questions, but just initially having a presentation of here's how your waste is broken down over time. Another thing that we're able to do, which may or may not be helpful depending on how informed the community board is, but just giving them a sense of what solid waste management facilities are in or around the community board or the community district that the community board could look at to see whether there are particular issues there. Again, noting that one of our roles as SWAB is to work with the folks in these community districts if they're noticing issues or if they have changes that they'd want or anything like that, just to provide some information about what's going on in their community district with solid waste management. And then I'm trying to see. Great. And so then this last slide, and again, these are all links because we would share the slides with folks, but this last slide is just a very clear way of how individuals and the community board can get involved. So basically, I linked our calendar here as a way for folks to see exactly what's coming up and how those can how they can join. Our goal with the calendar, and this is something that the chairs of the committees are working on, is making sure that we have an up-to-date calendar on our website with the Zoom link or the registration link right in the main invite or the main calendar info section. So people are able to find out what's going on when and join really easily. This is our Google group here, again, for folks to get info, registration for our monthly meetings, what we have here. Again, if folks are interested in joining committee, emailing us, and then also apply to be a member of QSWAB. We don't have a direct way of doing that at the moment, but if through these presentations we encounter people who are interested, you know, the community board rep. So if we're presenting to a community board, particularly one that doesn't have an active representative, if someone on the board after hearing the conversation is excited about getting involved, that's something that we can do immediately because all of the community boards have a slot, you know, set aside for a representative. But people wanting to join in their individual capacity, I mean, that's something that we would always be interested in, not to appoint them right away, but as we come up with the appointments and reappointments on a, you know, as we go throughout our terms, like that's something that our president's office would be interested in. So collecting those in those who are interested is something we also want to do. So that was pretty much what I put together. I'd say my initial thought having done this is, you know, I wasn't able to do much with 311, and that's something that is in the state of waste in Queens report, and something that I know the Environmental Justice Committee is interested in certain areas. So I think that that's one thing that I'd want to add is more on 311. I think some of the visualizations can be worked on to be more intuitive and useful. But I'll stop the share, but can pull it back up if folks have a particular slide they want to review. But I'm wondering if anyone has any immediate thoughts about what's missing, what should be changed, that sort of thing. Mary.
I'm wondering whether we might, instead of trying to draw them into QSWAB so much, if we might want to focus on the activities that they're doing in their own community district, because they'll all have a sanitation committee that might enable them to improve on the diversion rates. Another thing was maybe a slide about what it costs New York City to landfill and burn so much. Something about with organics, how this is going to lead to a reduction not only in cost over time, but greenhouse gases. Maybe a slide from the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that shows like what that tremendous contribution is from waste. Those were just a few thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that. I think that that's particularly the first point, really important. I think we can definitely prioritize more how we can promote what they're working on, how we can partner, because I think a lot of the focus was on how individuals get involved with us, as opposed to how we could partner. Any other thoughts from folks?
I think maybe just a general resource slide at the end of all of our, growing number of partners that we have. And, I've found that anytime I do any type of environmentally related presentation, you just get a question about every other environmental concern under the sun. So just a list of our partners and maybe the programs that we're advocating for, and a link to their website as a last page, and especially our colleagues over at the big reuse outreach associates who do all their presentations too.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that's like, as we build up resources that we create, we can also kind of permanently have those linked on stuff that we're sharing with folks that they can reference. Allison.
Hi, I think I hope I didn't miss it. But community board outreach has been just a hot topic in a number of recent meetings, like the organics committee, the Brooklyn SWAB meetings. So I think it's great. But we're talking about reaching out also to them and I don't know if it's the all SWAB letter that was sent to the mayor, if that's part of this, could be added to the presentation, but we're really trying to help also build the case for preserving community composting. I think we're all increasingly aware that most of what people think is being composted is not being composted. So we are talking about like sending either doing a mass email to all the community boards and following up with presentations, which will take time to develop, but there's just lots of key reasons to promote the positives about composting. We don't want to, we're still everybody's still kind of formulating a strategy. We don't want to, we might not want to be negative. We want it to be more about the positives of promoting community composting. Obviously, you can touch on, we're talking more and more about healthy soils and how, stormwater mitigation. And I know that's a topic of high concern in Queens. So, I'll keep, as we put stuff together, I'll definitely keep in touch with you. I don't know the timing of when you plan on having all these meetings. So.
Yeah, yes, same. Also do not know. Definitely the fall at the earliest though. But yeah, I think that's also a great point. Particularly things that we've voted on and submitted. If we're presenting before a deadline, for example, I know we tend to go closer to the deadline just because of our process of putting comments together and, you know, reviewing and voting on them. But if we've created a letter that a community board could sign on to, I think it would be helpful to highlight that as well, to just show this is, you know, what our recommendations are. If this is something your SWAB feels similarly about, this is how you could sign on to the letter, create your own, that sort of thing. So I think that that could also be a good addition. Mary.
Yeah, just to follow on to what Allison was saying, you know, rather than focusing on getting them to, you know, sign on to legislation or something like that, you know, more, I think, trying to make the case for why it's important for residents in that community district to participate, you know, perhaps in reference to an initiative. For example, you know, now they're going to come down, the city's going to come down with these new rules, DSNY's rules for, you know, how to do curbside composting. Well, why is it important? You know, this seems like, you know, just one more thing that a homeowner has to do, and it's going to be more complicated and time consuming. Like, you know, how can they do it, you know, simply and efficiently so that it's not a problem for them? You know, how does that get done? And then why should they be doing it? The bigger picture of that. So more of a, like a rationale at the level of a resident, say, you know, which is who they're dealing with. You know, why should people be doing this, and how can they do it so it creates the least problems for them? That's what I think we should be focusing on, things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great point. I think there's a lot of room for education on these programs, and not assuming that people know.
Exactly. Yeah, like, you know, and there's a composting committee now, a task force, and Queen should be involved in that. You know, Allison's here tonight, and Gil, I think, is involved, but more people getting involved in that, and then letting that inform, say, this presentation, because that's gonna start again, you know, and be a hot topic.
Mac, your hands.
Yeah, no, it was really good looking presentation. So good job, Ryan, and whoever else helped, if anybody. I got a couple questions and then probably some suggestions. So was that something that you already presented?
Yeah, yes. So CB2 had asked us to come in and talk about just a quick presentation on what we do. So this is one that I've already given.
Okay. And was it to the general body, or was it directly to committee?
Yeah, it was just to their committee. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good, because I was gonna say, yeah, probably should just go directly to the ones in who would be interested. But I guess my other suggestion, just based off of the slides, maybe if we have something that it might be a little bit more, but have something that might be a little interactive, like asking them what they feel their issues are, particularly in their neighborhood, because, you know, they're going to know it best. You know, I feel like just kind of having that, especially when it's local, and having the engagement kind of makes them a little bit more engaged. So maybe if we implement like a survey, like if we do our homework a little bit before, maybe a little research before, of what are the big things in the area. It could be illegal dumping, depending on where it is. It could be litter. It could be the compost, community composting in certain neighborhoods compared to others. So if we have maybe a little quick survey beforehand when we go in, we could do that, or maybe just have a little moment where they just write it in the chat for us and we kind of aggregate it in that sense. but maybe just probably just a little bit more interaction also.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also would not want this to be something where like we go to the community boards that have a higher than average rate and say, you know, you have a high rate, and then the ones that are lower than average, like, oh, you have a low rate. Like we want to be a resource for folks, like what their priorities are. And I think also making sure that we're meeting those priorities in the work that we're doing. So I think that that's definitely something that needs to be incorporated in.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely willing to help out and customize the ones on the southeast side of town, like, you know, community board 12, 13, 14. So just letting you know when they get back started again, you know, I could definitely help you with that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that the way that I think the Education and Communications Committee and myself were kind of thinking about this is it's like, this is a project that I think lots of folks can be working on. So whether someone is like, I know that there's someone on the communications committee who's like particularly interested in just doing these presentations. And so that's their interest and entry into this. For other folks, like if you're interested in your community board or a region of Queens or something like that, like there's tons of room for people to take like the base template and like really customize it to what the community board is working on and what people's interests are. So I think that as we start moving forward and like presenting this to more community boards, I'm thinking that it will naturally start with like the folks who are most interested, what community boards they're affiliated with or want to present to, like reaching out to those ones first, and then kind of going from there.
Yeah, I agree.
Mary.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing from Abby because they do community composting, you know, in terms of, you know, making inputs into this, what would be useful because they deal with people coming in there and, you know, what they know, what they don't know, how to make it easy for people, that sort of thing.
I mean, I think my compost team would know best, so I can definitely ask them for their input because they're the ones who are really on the ground doing it, both out in the community and at the garden as well. So I'd be happy to ask them and get their input.
Great. So this is great, and I think this is just the first iteration. So I think all of these comments and more that folks have as we move forward, there's lots to do here. But I think this is a pretty exciting project to start on. But I think we'll move on to the next agenda items. I think what we'll do, just in the interest of time, I think we'll do committee reports first and then use the rest of the time on brainstorming and old new business, that sort of thing. So just so that we have time for committee reports, and then the rest of the time can be eaten up with discussion. Really quickly before I call on folks who are here, I have an update from the Education and Communications Committee. Jenny wasn't able to join tonight, but she sent some info about what they worked on. So I'm going to share my screen again. This is a new section on our website, which is called a Take Action tab. And basically, so this is it. Once this shares, this is it's a new page. So we have our About Us, the calendar, Composting in Queens, all that. This Take Action is a new part of the page. And right now what we have is basically just a number of useful links for people. So registering for the next monthly meeting, learning about things, reading the State of Waste in Queens report, catching up on stuff. So this is where all of this will live permanently, but also what Jenny was saying is, I'll just read through this. So call to actions from the various committees can also eventually live here. So whether that's a one-time short thing, like sign on to this, whatever, like that's something, an event that's coming up, a registration link could be here. Bilal will be talking in a little bit about a cleanup that we're looking to organize. So like any sort of thing like that could also live on this page for people who are interested in taking action. And then at the bottom of the page for now, they just added, would your community board like to learn more about SWAB and how can we work together? Email us. This is a way for community boards to kind of get started on that presentation we were just talking about. Or if they have other things that they want, but this is just, she was saying, placeholder. We can definitely refine anything here. So this is a new section. If the committee chairs have things that they want to add, email me or email Jenny and we can get this here. Other folks, if you know of things that should maybe live here more permanently, we can also get those on. So definitely take some time to check this out on our website. So I'm gonna stop the share of that. And I will pass off first to Mary, because I'm not sure that there's a ton for legislative, and then Bilal has 2 events to be talking about for EJ. So Mary, will start with you.
Okay. So everyone should have received the invitation to the legislative committee meeting, which was held on July 20th. It included information about the DSNY hearing on August 10th about rules for organics curbside collection. The committees and the people present reached consensus on what should be included in a joint SWAB statement. And there's going to be a Zoom legislative committee meeting tomorrow night to finalize the testimony. I don't have that link yet, but I'll send it as soon as I get it. And then the statement will be sent to QSWAB members for an electronic vote as soon as it's ready. The sanitation hearing is August 10th at 10 a.m. Okay, there's a unified MSWAB comments, which included QSWAB that were sent for the New York State Solid Waste Management Plan. And, there's ongoing discussion about that. If anyone's interested in participating, please let me know. There's an organics task force, which I'm sure Allison will talk more about. And anyone interested should, there's an email that she'll give you. There was a discussion about City of Yes for carbon neutrality, which is changing New York City zoning regulations to meet zero waste goals. So that's ongoing. And we also received the all SWAB statement on organics over co-digestion, which we had voted on previously to support. And, that's an ongoing issue that's going to be coming up, I'm sure, over and over again. So that's what's going on. And there's no meeting in August. As far as I know right now, unless there's an emergency.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure to get everyone info on the link for tomorrow's meeting. So I'll pass to Bilal, and then Allison, if you want to talk about composting, you can after that. Bilal, if you want.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hope everyone is well. So the EJ committee has been busy over this past few months, trying to organize our informational session for the disadvantaged communities from the DEC, the Climate Justice Working Group. As we know, this is something that was brought to our attention in reference to Queens not being properly represented on the mapping that was put out by the DEC in reference to who was or who is labeled disadvantaged due to climate impacts, etc. So long story short, we wanted to host an informational session that will allow more people to become more informed about this issue, what's at stake, and what are some next steps people can do. We wanted to involve all the parties that were involved with this process. So long story short, we have a swath of speakers that have expressed that they are ready to participate in September versus the summer, kind of pull back from the summer because everyone's busy, everyone's going on vacation. So we're now looking at the September the 23rd to have this event. The 16th is a holiday, so we will avoid the September the 16th. Right now, we are looking at September the 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. At the Greater Nexus headquarters on Parsons Boulevard in Queens. It is a recently opened as a site for business and tech innovation for African American community there in CB12 in that community. I know the executive director there, Ms. Patricia Robinson, who has given us the space for free for us to do this event. Our speakers will be Ms. Alana Tuckley from Environmental Justice, Director of Environmental Justice from the DEC. Also, we will have Dr. Vina from Queens College, as well as a representative from the Eastern Queens Alliance as well. So please, you will see more information forthcoming, a flyer, etc., with more details, how to register, etc., will be emailed to everyone once that is complete. But we are looking at September the 23rd as our day to have our event in regards to the informational session on the disadvantaged communities mapping. The second event is going to be a community cleanup. We were looking for a partner, and Ryan helped me to plug in with the Queens Botanical Gardens, QBG, EV. We discussed the parameters of what needs to be cleaned, and around College Point Boulevard and around the perimeter of Queen QBGs, usually a lot of littering, a lot of dumping of trash. You can imagine, especially on College Point Boulevard, a lot of trash on that side of things. So we're looking at doing an event there, more than likely be in October, just because, again, the summer, everyone's going away and everyone's going to make commitments to the later portion of the summer before school starts back up. So we are looking at doing something in a weekend, a Saturday in October. We're looking into that. So stay tuned for more information on that. And it would include, you just come, all supplies will be provided. There will be some snacks and some water, and then also a tour of QBG as well. Nice little tour will be there too for everyone as well. And perhaps, some pumpkins, etc. It's October. But yeah, so that's the update from the Environmental Justice Committee.
Perfect.
Oh, pumpkins and candy, Evie said. Pumpkins and candy. So please come.
Quickly, Mary, I see your hand. One quick point, just to make one of our goals also is feedback here. One of our goals with this cleanup is also to just have kind of a fun event for us to all meet in person, as well as the benefits of cleaning up. So not mandatory, but definitely encourage for folks to come on out if you're able when we have details. So we can do something fun as a SWAB that's not constrained by Robert's Rules of Order. So Mary, you had a question.
I wanted to ask Bilal what the name of the venue was.
The what?
The name of the venue.
The venue?
Yeah, for the
Greater Nexus.
Great Nexus. Okay, thank you.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for that update. Allison, not to put you on the spot, but if you do want to talk about composting, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I can. There's a lot, so I'll try to like keep it short. I guess just to touch on what the task force was the new task force, basically, as I said earlier, protecting community composting. So we're, advocating to protect those sites for all the reasons that we're going to outline, collecting data. We're talking about, collecting data, like doing a kind of a census to document the capacity of all the food scrap drop-offs and community gardens. So we're, compiling a list of that and trying to determine that. Probably going to look into doing some healthy urban soils legislation. So that's on the map. But and also really just kind of like helping to build the political momentum to get some additional laws passed and basically organizing composters to really get motivated to help us with some of these important things, that I talked about, like the, really promoting composting over co-digestion, because that's something that a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, there's the task force meeting, there's just the regular Manhattan Organics Committee meeting, kind of a lot of the stuff merges, but if anyone wants to join those meetings, please contact me. And then, I also wanted to say that Brooklyn SWAB is also working on messaging about how to their outreach, and they're doing outreach to community boards too. And I'm going to join their meeting for the first time because they're also talking about outreach about how to increase participation on organics, which I think we all want to do. And I really wanted to ask, as I seem to ask every meeting, I mean, because I don't know, I haven't been able to crunch open data. I got to really get tech savvy and figure it out. Looking at the numbers, like what's happening in Queens, because they're starting to talk about Brooklyn, so that's why Brooklyn SWAB is really ramping up. But we'd love to learn from what's going on in Queens. And I think, like anecdotally, I asked last time, it's like, are you seeing more people using brown bins? What kind of communications are you getting? Mailings? What kind of communication is bouncing around in Queens? I mean, what are you seeing? If you want to share now or put it in the chat. I think that's it.
That's perfect. And I think one thing that we had talked about in the past organizing, which I think may be something that all of the SWABs would be interested in, is having like a listening event, whether we have DSNY there or not. Having an event where we have a forum for people to kind of voice their experience with the program. So, we'll get emails to the QSWAB email about folks who want to participate, but their building isn't putting the bins out, for example. That's pretty much the only things that I got. But I think, like, the question that you raised about just what are you experiencing, like I imagine that people will have a lot of comments. And so creating a space for that, making it clear that we're not the decision makers on a lot of things, so we don't get people angry at us. But just to hear what people's experiences are, so we can both bring that and inform kind of the work that we're doing. That's something that we've talked about that I think would be useful.
That would be great. And what are you telling people that contact you? I mean,
yeah, we don't.
That's what we're trying to do. The build. I mean, that was the focus this time, like getting high-rise buildings. So we want to help those people. So if there's something I can do to help, we can offline talk.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also something that we don't have a great answer for. And I don't know that DSNY does either. In as a voluntary program, I mean, as a mandatory program, that changes things. But as a voluntary program, I think that was one of DSNY's kind of planning around this, was to just automatically deliver to all buildings above, I think 10 was the cutoff, but that was really, and I mean, also engaging with folks, sending material to supers and building managers, but not really doing any anything in terms of like finding out who is or isn't putting out the bins or following up with places that don't have the bins put out. The real focus was just automatic delivery and making it as easy as possible. So I think like if we have ideas or if people have ideas on how to boost participation, particularly in multifamily buildings, that would be something that we could work on.
We have some resources on the Manhattan SWAB's Organics Committee page, so there's some
Yeah.
resources there, but a lot of times it's just kind of, you know, hand holding, and it's case by case because every building's different. So yeah, I would love to talk to you more about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I would also say, you know, with one of the Vanessa sent the link to the rule requiring the source separation of residential organic waste. I think that's really interesting. You know, people are able to submit individual comments. So like one, that's a great thing for folks on SWAB to do if you're so inclined. But two, you know, all of the comments are there. And so I was reading it the other day and like you can see what people are saying. And I think that that's very informative, particularly for folks who are not in favor of the rule, to just look and see like what are people's concerns about curbside composting and use that to inform like materials that we produce or messaging that we're saying. There's a lot with rats, a lot with all these types of things. Like I think that that's actually a very useful piece of information to just get a sense of like what are people thinking and then writing as comments to this. So I would recommend folks check that out if you have time and want to see more. Great. So we're close to time, so I don't want to cut this conversation short. The brainstorming priorities for 2023 to 2024. Basically just to introduce this, and I think that there might be space for like a survey or just setting aside time in the committees. Basically like what we've been talking about in the executive committee meeting in preparation for this meeting tonight was that, you know, a lot of our focus in previous years, a lot of the goals that we were working towards have been met, which is not to say that the work is done. And we have a lot that we're still focusing on, particularly like what Mary outlined with the ongoing legislative issues. Like there's definitely things that we're still working on. But with the rollout of citywide curbside composting, you know, we talked about making sure that we're covering everything that folks are interested in. So at this point, you know, if there's an interest in focusing more on plastics or switching to not switching, but you know, basically just like at this juncture where our focus for a long time was on getting curbside composting, and now we have curbside composting, there's still a lot to do with that, and making sure that we're meeting what folks are interested in. So I think, you know, we don't have a ton of time now, but if there is something that someone has that's, you know, a burning interest that they've wanted the QSWAB to focus more on, you know, raise your hand or put it in the chat. I think that another thing we can do is send around like a open form survey to the members to kind of give some feedback on some areas that they'd be interested in. And I think also, you know, I imagine most committee meetings will pause for August and then come back in September. The first meeting back in September could be a good opportunity for committees to sit down and plan out, you know, what are the priorities that you have, what areas are you most interested in, so that we can make sure that we're covering what we want to be working on. So I'll pause for a second here and you know, open the floor if anyone has something that they're interested in or would like to see SWAB do more of. And if not, that's okay. This can just be planting a seed for future conversation. Perfect.
I think we have a very full plate right now.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that there are a lot of, we definitely have enough to be working on, so we don't need to add anything. If folks have things, we can definitely entertain them. But yeah, so I think maybe a survey, or would really just like one question, just like, what is there anything that you are hoping SWAB touches upon in the next year, just to get some feedback. But yeah, I think that is it. Yeah, open Google form. Yeah, I think that's probably best. And if we get a lot of, I'll share the results of the Google form, what ideas folks have, and then that can be an agenda item for our first meeting back, just to see, what folks are thinking about, where that can be allocated to committees, and what people are thinking. Great. I think that's all I had. Is there any sort of announcements or anything that folks want to make before we close? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That second from Evie or Rachel?
I think it was Evie.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Any opposed? Great. Thank you all so much for coming out in July. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summers, and we'll follow up with some links for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you. Happy summer.